Think you know Queen Elizabeth I? What about the queen whose coronation ring literally had to be cut off her rotting finger, who believed that pure mercury lipstick was a magical charm against death, and whose coffin eventually exploded from decomposition gases right in the middle of her funeral ceremony? This is the story they'll never tell you in boring history classes. Smallpox scars drove her to poison herself. Alright, let's get into it. And to immediately give you a sense of the hell we're dealing with, let's fast forward to 1562. Our heroine is just 29, young, full of vigor, and then a boom, she is struck down by smallpox. And this, my friends, wasn't just a common cold with a fever. Imagine a hellish fever. You're shaking so hard your teeth chatter, and then your entire body, every inch, gets covered in hideous, dust-filled blisters. They swell, they burst, oozing some yellow gunk and blood. The stench is as if your flesh is rotting alive on you. Every movement, even just a breath, is torture. In those days, 9 out of 10 who fell ill went straight to the grave. Doctors were already preparing her shroud. The court was bidding farewell to the queen, but she survived. She pulled through, happily ever after. You'd think, not a chance in hell. They won't tell you this in boring history classes. But when the fever subsided and she first looked in the mirror, her world collapsed. Her once perfect, smooth skin, which she was so proud of, had turned into a pockmarked, cratered field. Deep, ugly smallpox scars permanently disfigured her face. This wasn't just a cosmetic defect. You see, in the 16th century, a monarch's face wasn't just a face. It was, damn it, the shop window of the state, a symbol of strength, health, and divine blessing. And what did her subjects and, even worse, her enemies now see? A face like a moonscape. Mutilated. Weak. It was like a flag with holes in it. A sign that God had turned away. And she understood this perfectly. A real, fierce paranoia began to set in. A panicked fear of appearing weak, flawed. A fear of simply being devoured, overthrown, torn to pieces. And she found a solution, a radical one. She decided to literally paint herself a new face. Every day, she began to apply a thick, dense, plaster-like layer of makeup to her skin. The base of this concoction was something called Venetian trues. Sounds beautiful. But do you know what it was made of? Lead and vinegar. Yes, folks, pure, goddamn lead. Every morning, she spent hours plastering her face with this poisonous paste, transforming it into a lifeless white mask. She concealed more than just scars beneath it. She hid her fear, her insecurity, her humiliation. But here's the cruel irony, my friends. Lead is a poison. Slow but sure. And with each passing day, this salvific mask not only concealed ugliness but created new ones. The skin beneath it literally rotted, thinned, covered in new sores and gray spots from the poisoning. And the worse her real face became, the thicker she had to apply the trues. She had fallen into her own trap. A vicious circle from which there was no escape. And this was just the first circle of her personal, self-made hell. Her face was a poisonous mask. So, ready to descend into the next circle of this hell. Because there, waiting for us, isn't just self-deception. There's chemistry. Yes, real, poisonous, merciless chemistry that the queen voluntarily rubbed into her face. They won't tell you this in history textbooks, where her portraits are so, well, you know, majestic. But beneath that majesty lay a truth that makes your hair stand on end. The main component of her makeup, her salvation, as she thought, was called Venetian trues. Sounds beautiful, doesn't it? Venice, romance, yeah, right. In reality, it was a volatile mixture of vinegar, water, and lead. Yes, folks. Lead. That very heavy metal that slowly but surely kills all living things. It's like if today, to hide a pimple, you smeared yourself with, well, I don't know, battery acid. The effect would be pretty much the same. And now the most horrifying part. By the end of her life, according to court accounts, the layer of this lead plaster on her face reached a thickness of 2.5 centimeters. Guys, just grab a ruler. See what that is. That's not makeup. That's a plaster mask. That's a crust. Imagine that shell on her face. It cracked when the queen tried to smile or frown. Beneath it, in that airless environment, her real skin was simply rotting alive. It festered, oozed pus from new sores, which mixed with the lead paste into a disgusting, grayish mass. Can you imagine the smell? The smell of decomposition, which they tried to cover up with tons of perfume. But do you think she washed this nightmare off at night? Ha! Not a chance. Washing it off was an entire operation, painful and lengthy. And why bother? To see the monster she was becoming in the mirror? No way. The queen wore her lead mask for weeks, without taking it off. And all this time, every second, the lead was doing its dark work. It wasn't just lying on the surface, it was absorbed, through pores, through open smallpox wounds, through new pustules. It penetrated her bloodstream, poisoning her from the inside, a hit to her kidneys, a hit to her nervous system, hair loss, blackened teeth, constant fatigue. And the more poison was absorbed, the grayer and deader the skin under the mask became, the more new inflamed areas appeared, and the thicker, damn it, the new layer of truths was needed to hide not just smallpox scars, but the consequences of total body poisoning. Her face became her prison, a poisonous, smelly, leaden cage. But you understand, don't you, that the poison that eats away at your body will sooner or later reach your brain, and that's where things get really interesting. Because a decaying royal face is one thing, and a completely different thing is her paranoid, lead-poisoned mind. She finished herself off with mercury, and you think, well, that's it. Rock bottom has been hit. A paranoid queen whose brain is melting from lead and whose face is turning into a rotting mask. How could it get any worse, right? And I'll tell you, it can always get worse. Because they won't tell you this in boring history books. They'll show you a formal portrait, and they'll shyly omit what went on behind the closed doors of her bedroom. So, buckled up. Let's keep going. Every evening, the queen performed a ritual, the ritual of removing her lead armor, and to scrape off the solidified, pore-embedded poison from her face, she used even more poison. Yes, you heard that right. To remove one poison, she used another, even more insidious one, an aggressive mixture, the main component of which was mercury. Just for a second, imagine this scene. Night, the queen's chambers. She, with her lead-corroded face, takes a cloth soaked in this hellish concoction and literally begins to scrape off her makeup. Imagine the pain, mercury on open, festering wounds from the lead cosmetics. This wasn't washing, it was torture. It burned. It corroded, it penetrated her blood. The smell of decaying flesh, mixed with the arid chemical odor that hung in her rooms, drove the servants mad, and she endured it every single evening. But even this, folks, was just the beginning. This was just preparation, because her main weapon, her fetish, her curse, was lipstick. Her famous bright red lipstick, which became her trademark, so vibrant, provocative, blood red. Do you know what it was made of? Cinnabar. And cinnabar is, simply put, mercury sulfide. And this is where her lead poison brain fully reveals itself. Elizabeth didn't just put on lipstick. No, she was absolutely convinced that this poisonous stuff was her personal amulet, a magical shield that warded off death itself. The worse she felt, the more her body decayed, the more thickly she smeared her lips. And she didn't apply it in a thin layer, like people do on Instagram today. No. She applied it in a layer a centimeter thick. Can you imagine that? A centimeter of poisonous mercury paste on her lips. Every day. This was no longer lipstick. It was a crust. A red, poisonous shell that cracked when she tried to speak, which she inevitably licked off and swallowed throughout the day, adding a new dose of poison to what was already flowing through her veins, lead, slowly killing you from the inside, and mercury, which you cover yourself with on the outside, firmly believing it will save you. Complete, total madness. And so the question is, what happens when these two heavy metals throw a party in your head? When paranoia caused by lead meets the uncontrollable rage and hallucinations brought on by mercury. Oh, friends, such a horror show begins that the sickest horror screenwriters couldn't even dream of it. Her mind plunged into an abyss so, buckled up. Do you think I'm exaggerating about horror stories? How horror screenwriters are mere children compared to what reality dished out. So, this horror show, that's when your own brain, poisoned by lead and mercury, declares war on you. A war of annihilation. Her mind didn't just crack, it plunged into a black, viscous, suffocating abyss. This isn't just autumn blues where you want to curl up under a blanket with cocoa. No, this is a severe, leaden melancholy, where every breath is an effort, and every thought is a small nail being hammered into your skull. But that's not all. Remember the mercury hallucinations. Oh, they came. And how? Imagine you're sitting in your luxurious chambers, and across from you, in a chair, sits you. Only not the version in the mirror, but your exact replica, only scrawny, emaciated, with parchment skin and empty eyes. Your own corpse, which has come to sit with you. It says nothing. It just stares. And you understand that it's waiting for you to yield your place. They won't tell you this in dry history textbooks, where her condition will be attributed to nervous disorder. What the hell kind of disorder? This was a personal, round-the-clock hell. And do you know what she did? She refused to lie down in bed. Absolutely. Because for her, the bed was a rehearsal for the grave. To lie down meant to surrender. To lie down meant to allow that scrawny double in the chair to win. And so she stood and R to 15 hours straight, in the middle of the room, like a mad statue, until her feet swelled and turned into two leaden stumps. Courtiers begged her, but she only shook her head, her gaze fixed on the empty chair. Eventually, these poor souls, desperate, started placing pillows under her feet, just so she wouldn't collapse dead. Just imagine this scene, the queen of a great empire, standing in the middle of a hall on a pile of pillows, because she's afraid to lie in her own bed due to a ghost of herself. Do you think this is rock bottom? Do you think it can't get any worse? Oh, friends, we haven't even started talking about what her body turned into. About rotting alive, about the smells and pain that accompanied the last days of this heavy metal party. But that in the next installment of our dark story. Don't switch off. It's going to hurt. Her body took its revenge after death. Well, friends, I promised it would hurt. So don't say, I didn't warn you. We left our queen in agony, and a feast of heavy metals that were consuming her from the inside. But you know what's most ironic? Her body, which she had kept on a tight leash all her life, which was her main political instrument, decided to take its revenge. And it did so after her death. Let's start with a symbol, with the coronation ring. This thing, a symbol of her union with the country, had been on her finger for 44 years. 44 years. Can you imagine that? The ring had simply grown into her finger, become part of her hand, when the queen died. Her ladies-in-waiting faced a problem. The ring wouldn't come off at all. The finger beneath it had swollen, turned blue, and, let's be honest, simply rotted. They won't tell you this in history textbooks, where everything is proper and noble. They won't write how servants had to take tools and literally cut the ring off her dead hand, tearing skin and flesh that had long become one with the metal. Imagine the stench, the scene. There's your monarchical grandeur. But wait, there's more. In the last days of her life, the court generally resembled a horror movie set. The queen was plagued by ominous omens. She imagined shadows in the corners of her luxurious chambers. She complained of whispers that no one but her could hear. Courtiers attributed this to illness, to fever, but servants whispered about something else, about witchcraft. That one of her enemies had finally cast a spell that finished off the old ruler. Was it true or pre-death delirium? You decide. But the atmosphere in the castle was so thick you could cut the air with a knife. And then, the apotheosis. The cherry on this rotting cake of humiliation. The queen's body, as was customary, was placed in a hermetically sealed lead coffin. To preserve the remains for eternity, an expensive, luxurious tin can, but they overlooked something. Biology. Inside this sarcophagus, the body, packed with poisons and decomposing at a furious rate, began to release gases. A lot of gases. Pressure grew with each hour. And so, during the funeral ceremony, in the presence of the entire court, something happened that official chronicles are silent about like partisans. But one of the ladies-in-waiting described it in her diary with absolute clarity: a dull, sickening pop. The coffin exploded. No, not like a bomb in an action movie. It didn't burst into pieces, but the lid bowed, the seams cracked, and from the resulting fissures, such a cloud of stench erupted that people began to faint. The queen's body, her flesh swollen with gases, literally burst inside its lead prison. It was the final act of defiance, the ultimate humiliation. Her body, which she had controlled for so long, made a mockery of her even after death. The body took its revenge. But do you think that's all? That the story ends with a burst coffin and a scandalous smell? Oh no. The true darkness was just beginning for those who remained after her, and for those who were to inherit her cursed throne. More on that next time. Don't miss it. It'll get even darker.